It's me, Brodie McLeod, again, talking or waffling at my phone using the screen recording so I can use other apps as well as just the camera to convey my message to you. And just sitting in my room at the lodge, which is a mental rehab, and wondering about my detention. I've wrestled with the team at Signet to get my data. They've said that they're currently in the process of providing it to me, all of it on a USB pen, but they haven't replied to my emails about that. I've tried to ask for my section papers. They were eventually provided to me, but then when I moved from the main site to the lodge, which is a smaller hospital just up the road from the main big Signet Cusack hospital, my section papers went missing. I did have a big box. I'll show you the box. They have this massive box of all of my papers inside it. It's all zoomed in. Wait a second. Yeah, all my papers. And inside this box, I had where I'd kept in a little cubby hole, just where my flask is in my old room, an envelope that contained all my section papers. Anyway, that's went missing in the move. And they moved all my stuff up from here, from down at the main site, up to this place, the lodge. They put it all into a big cage with wheels on the bottom of it, and it took about 5-6 hours after I was brought up here for all my stuff to arrive, and when it did, my section papers were missing. But it said on the section papers in the H3, H4 documents I was transferred to this hospital, Signet Cusack, in August 2024, and I've asked for something called a medical legal scrutiny checklist loads of times, included within my subject access request for all my data, and also verbally and in writing. And what they've said to me is that I can see it on a computer screen. So they're happy to show it to me and prove to me that it exists, but they're not happy for me to actually have a printed physical copy of medical legal scrutiny checklist. If you don't know what one of those is, then just Google it, because I can't be bothered to explain it. It's a tool for making sure that your section is lawful and that everything's been done properly and that nothing's gone kind of dodgily or wrong in your furnishing of a section. But I didn't know much about unlawful detention. A lot of our mental health act solicitors will actually advertise for unlawful detention. So I asked Gemini, I've noticed several legal firms advertising for defence against cases of unlawful detention, specifically as mental health act solicitors. Are there any available statistics on the number or frequency of cases of unlawful detention involving sections of the Mental Health Act in the UK? How much would a case typically be, if worth, in terms of compensation? And if I am detained under Section 3 without a medical legal scrutiny checklist having been completed, is there a possibility that I could currently be unlawfully detained too? Just to be clear, I don't know that I'm absent from the medical legal scrutiny checklist. They've just very atypically and unusually at Signet said that I can't have it in printed format. They said I can look at it on a computer screen, but I can't have a printed copy of it, which is very atypical and unusual. Presents quite kind of suspiciously to me. Gemini said it's important to understand the complexities around unlawful detention under the Mental Health Act in the UK. Here's a breakdown of your questions. Statistics on unlawful detention and the Mental Health Act in the UK. While there are annual statistics on detentions under the Mental Health Act, MHA, getting precise figures solely for unlawful detentions is challenging. Detention statistics. NHS Digital publishes annual figures on detentions under the Mental Health Act. For example, in the year 22-23, there were 51,312 new detentions recorded. These statistics provide breakdowns by section type, for example, Section 2 or Section 3, age, gender and ethnicity. However, these figures present lawful detentions made under the Act. Unlawful detention data. Data on unlawful detention specifically is not routinely collected and published in the same way. Unlawful detention often arises from procedural errors, delays in finding appropriate beds, or continued detention after a patient is no longer legally eligible. Some reports, like one from the National Police Chiefs Council, NPCC, in 2017, highlighted concerns about thousands of people being potentially unlawfully held by police due to delays in accessing hospital beds. This gives a glimpse into one area where unlawful detention can occur. The Care Quality Commission, CQC, registers organisations that detain people under the Act, and they investigate concerns and complaints, which can include instances of unlawful detention. However, Consolidated national statistics on proven cases of unlawful detention are not readily available in the public domain. Cases of unlawful detention often come to light through individual complaints, appeals to the Mental Health Tribunal, or legal claims to detaining authorities. Typical compensation for unlawful detention. The compensation for unlawful detention, also known as false imprisonment under the Mental Health Act, can vary significantly depending on the circumstances of each case, including the duration of the detention. So the longer the unlawful detention, generally the higher the compensation. The impact on the individual. This includes emotional distress, psychological harm, injury to reputation, or any financial losses incurred. Aggravating factors. These could include poor treatment during detention, lack of dignity, or malicious intent on the part of those responsible. Exemplary damages. In rare cases where there's been an oppressive, arbitrary, or unconstitutional action by the public officials, exemplary damages may be awarded to punish the defendant and deter similar conduct. General guidelines from similar false imprisonment cases, noting Mental Health Act cases can be more complex due to the context of mental health needs. Starting point. For straightforward wrongful arrest and imprisonment, compensation might start at around £500 for the first hour. 24 hours. For a detention of 24 hours, damages could be around £3,000. Daily rate. A daily rate would then apply, but at a lesser rate. Aggravated damages. If there are aggravated factors, an additional £1,000 or more could be awarded. Significant cases, compensation can range significantly. Examples from false imprisonment cases against the police, which share similarities with unlawful detention, have seen cases awards from a few £1,000s for short periods or lesser severe impacts to tens of thousands for longer term detentions or significant harm. One notable case involved £25,000 for 42 days of unlawful imprisonment due to the shock and stigma. Another case related to unlawful deprivation of liberty, though not explicitly MHA, saw damages of £143,000 for almost 8 years of unlawful detention. I've been subject to an unlawful and what they called an authorised deprivation of liberty by Avon and Wiltshire Partnership once when I was waiting at the place of safety to get seen. It's crucial to remember these are just examples, and a solicitor specialising in mental health law or actions against public authorities will be able to provide a more accurate estimate based on the specifics of your situation. Detention under Section 3 without a medical legal scrutiny checklist. Let's be clear, I don't know that I haven't got a medical legal scrutiny checklist. They just won't give me a copy of it. So I've asked for a copy of it in writing and I've asked for a copy of it verbally, and they won't provide it to me. They just said you can see it on the screen, we'll show it to you on the computer, but you can't have it in printed copy. Unlawful detention under Section 3 without a medical legal scrutiny checklist. It said yes, there is a possibility that you could currently be unlawfully detained if a medical legal scrutiny checklist was not completed, or if there were other procedural irregularities in your section or detention. Well, I don't know why I can't see the edge of the Gemini then, that's a bit weird. Section 3 of the Mental Health Act 1983 allows for admission for treatment and is a more long-term detention than Section 2. For a Section 3 to be lawful, strict procedural requirements must be met. These include application by an approved mental health professional, or AMP as they're commonly known in abbreviation. The application must be made by an AMP who has personally seen you and consulted with your nearest relative unless it's not reasonably practicable or would cause unreasonable delay. 2 medical recommendations. You must be examined by 2 registered mental practitioners, doctors, one of whom must be approved under the MHA with special experience in mental disorder diagnosis or treatment. These examinations must take place within a specified time frame, typically 5 days of each other, and crucially, one of the doctors should ideally have previous acquaintance with you, and if not, the other doctor should. Appropriate treatment. The purpose of the detention must be for appropriate medical treatment, which cannot be provided unless you are detained. I certainly did have a relapse, and it certainly was appropriate that I was detained under a section. It's just that they didn't do things by the book. And if they don't do things by the book, then they're leaving themselves open to litigation, basically. Scrutiny of papers. Hospitals have procedures for scrutinising detention papers to ensure they're legally valid. While there might not be a single medical legal scrutiny checklist universally named as such, trusts have internal checklists and processes to ensure that all the necessary forms are correctly completed, signed, dated, and correspond to legal requirements of the Mental Health Act. How a missing or incomplete checklist could lead to unlawful detention. I'm assuming it says lead. I just can't see it there. The medical legal scrutiny checklist you refer to is essentially a set of internal checks that hospitals and AMPs use to ensure the detention paperwork is legally sound. If this checklist wasn't completed, or if its absence indicates that fundamental legal requirements like those listed above were missed or incorrectly applied, then your detention could be unlawful. Key areas where procedural errors can render detention unlawful include incorrect forms or incomplete information, missing signatures, incorrect dates, or vital information being absent. Failure to consult the nearest relative. Unless valid reasons for not doing so are documented in the documents. Doctors' recommendations not meeting criteria. For example, doctors not having sufficient previous acquaintance where required, or examinations being too far apart. Detention continuing after criteria no longer met. For example, if you are no longer considered to be suffering from a mental disorder of a nature or degree that warrants detention. What to do if you suspect you're unlawfully detained? Well, I've already done all of these things, I'm pretty sure. If you're detained under Section 3 and have concerns about the legality of your detention, particularly if you believe procedures like a medical legal scrutiny checklist or the underlying legal requirements it checks for were not followed, you should request your detention papers. I've done that. They've gone missing, and I've got another SAR which is in the process of being posted to me on a USB stick from the Data Protection Office, but they haven't replied to my email for the last couple of days on that one. It says you have a right to see all the documents related to your section. Contact an independent Mental Health Act advocate. There's two that I've worked with. One's been significantly worse than the other, but they just basically decided to err on the side of trying to defend the hospital. And when I put stuff into AI and asked questions about it, I did deep research on Gemini, and it told me that what the IMHA said was just a crock of shit, and that they were just trying to defend the hospital. So they were very biased, in my opinion, very unprofessional. IMHAs are independent of mental health services, supposedly, and can help you understand your rights, obtain information, and challenge your detention. Contact Mental Health Act solicitor. I've spoken to about 20 solicitors about this situation. None of them would touch it with a barge pole except for one, who agreed that she would come along, and she said, I'll look over your section papers, but if I do find that you're unlawfully detained, I'm not going to do anything. And I had to kind of double take on the phone. I was like, so wait a second, you're saying that if you find that I'm unlawfully detained, which would mean a 6-figure litigation sum and a crime had taken place, as in unlawful deprivation of liberty, you're not going to do anything? And she said, yeah, that's right. I'll get a legal help form, not legal aid, but legal help. I'll come and look over your section papers, but if I find anything wrong with them, I'm not going to prosecute. And that's as far as I've got. Everybody who's got back to me, I've made loads of inquiries to solicitors, and every single one of them won't touch it with a barge pole. But it says to contact a solicitor. Gemini says it's highly recommended. A solicitor specialising in mental health law can review your detention papers, assess the legality of your section, and advise you on the best course of action, including making an application to the Mental Health Tribunal or pursuing a claim for unlawful detention, which they just refuse to do. Appeal to the Mental Health Tribunal. You have a right to apply to the Mental Health Tribunal to review your detention. They can discharge you if they find that your detention is no longer justified or was unlawful. It's crucial to act quickly if you believe your detention is unlawful, as time limits may apply to certain challenges. I don't know if I'm lawfully detained or not. Like I said, all they've said to me is that I can see this bit of paper, this very important bit of paper, but I can only see it on a computer screen. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. I have got a Signet SAR on the way, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that when I get it, and I'm not sure how I can police or litigate, because no solicitors will touch this with a barge pole, like I said, and I don't know the law well enough to represent myself or what I could do if I was unlawfully detained. But if anyone else has got a good solicitor that's interested in representing me and finding out why it is that things have been so unusual and potentially improper during my detention, you can contact me on my phone number 07576 713 026, or on Twitter at Brody Likes You, that's BRODIE Likes You, or on Instagram MacLeod Brody, MacLeod BRODIE, or by carrier pigeon, or by telepathic dwarf, or if you've got access to that thing from the Neverending Story, you could ride that, or a dragon, just ride it to just outside. I'm in the lodge in the room directly above the office. So if you want to get hold of me, you can just ring on the doorbell downstairs if you've flown your dragon here. And I hope that everyone who's interested in trying to get to the bottom of this case is got deep pockets and a big heart, because you need both of those things to be able to go up against these guys. I think